The following is an excerpt from the According to Metal podcast.
Joining us on According to Metal this week, and I gotta hand it to Biv. Biv once again lands another incredible guest of another incredible band that maybe a lot of you haven't got a chance to hear yet, but you certainly need to. And by the end of this interview, we know you're definitely going to want to check these guys out. Joining us, of course, on this show is Mark Kennedy, lead vocalist, co-founder of the band Damnation's Day, who has an incredible album that came out a couple years ago, Invisible the Dead, which we'll talk to him about, but also they just recorded a new album, soon to be released. I'm sure we'll find out soon when that will be, and I can't wait to get more details on that. But Mark Kennedy from Damnation's Day. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, Mark. Now, one of the things that I have to ask is, you know, you only have one CD out, and somehow you landed a deal with Nightmare Records, which Lance King was on our show on the very first episode of According to Metal, so he's one of our favorite guys. You know, so you landed a deal with Nightmare Records. You've been on tour with just some amazing names already. You've done things with one CD that many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands of bands out there haven't been able to do in 4 or 5 or 6 CDs. Kind of walk us through, how did that happen?
It's hard to, I mean, obviously, it's luck as well. I can't say it's not luck. Right timing and stuff, but I think it's very important these days with the competition that, like, healthy competition, not saying unhealthy competition, but you have a lot of bands throwing out EPs and half-thought recordings, and we found that if we put the time and money into a really good recording and a really strong debut album, and we really focused on the songwriting and the actual production, and we actually hired a producer for it as well, and helped us out a lot. And it just, the product almost spoke for itself, and we got a lot more attention, and we just presented ourselves a lot more professionally than, no offense to the other bands that do it, because they work unbelievably hard as well, but then throwing out demos and EPs rather than a full production. And I think that it definitely makes a huge difference, even especially overseas as well, because they're just going by first appearances, really.
Well, let me ask you something, Mark, really quick. When you look at your first album, Invisible the Dead, and I'm telling you, folks, if you haven't heard that album, this is a podcast. Pause what I'm saying right now. Go listen to the album and come back, because it'll make it an even better experience for you. But Mark, just an incredible album that you guys wrote, and I have my own thoughts, but you know what I always find interesting about metal is the genre that a band is put in. So, in your words, as you know, a co-founder of the band, essentially, in 30 seconds, how would you describe the sound of Damnation's Day to somebody who's maybe never heard you before? Okay,
so I'd put it in. We just do it plain and simple. It's melodic metal, atmospheric rock, even. It's not power metal, and it's not full-blown progressive metal. It's probably, I'd say, melodic, heavy rock metal with elements of atmospheric metal. There's not much more I can say, because, I mean, we get thrown into power metal, we get thrown into prog metal, which I'm quite happy to be thrown in anywhere, but as influences like, Devin Townsend, you got influences like Faith No More, and then you've got influences like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and then we've got influences like Dark Tranquillity and all those bands, like from all different genres.
Right.
We just produced an album that kind of covered a lot of bases. So I think it's hard to say. It's a hard one, because I think even with this new album, it's hard to put us directly in a genre.
No, there's a ton of melody in Invisible the Dead, and I think you hit it right on the head. It's kind of hard to put you in a particular category, which is why I wanted to ask, because nothing stands out to me as like, oh, they're clearly a progressive metal band, or oh, they're clearly a power metal, or whatever you may call it. You guys have just It's just good metal, period. I guess if that's a category, let's put it in that. How's that?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Thanks. Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, we got paired up with Accept for our big European tour, and that was one of the best experiences I'll probably ever have in my life. But, I mean, for like anthem-based traditional metal, I think it was sometimes in particular parts of Europe a funny mix. Whereas, I know, like from Australia, because we're all different bands, we just play together because there's not that many bands. We're used to seeing a lot of different styles on the same bill, but I think for them to not have the exact same genre supporting such an iconic metal band was a bit strange for a lot of fans.
Well, speaking of which, I was reading over the list of bands that you've opened for and shared the stage with.
Yep.
And it's really impressive. In fact, too many for me to even list here, but kind of there has to be a great backstage moment, or maybe just an aha moment for you, or maybe something really funny that happened on the road with Accept or anybody else that you supported. Can you just think of a funny story or something that you want to share with us?
Well, the crew members from Accept, that Uwe Lulis was one of them. He ended up, he's actually in the band now. But they bought, because they were so obsessed with the fact we were from Australia, and I think they really enjoyed the sort of humour we have here. They bought me a €65 kangaroo costume, and they were so pumped I was going to wear it on the last show. I promised them I'd wear it, and we were going to get up on stage, and I was going to play in this kangaroo costume. And they were loving it. They were in tears. But then, unfortunately, the boys from Accept themselves, they said, look, we take our shows a little bit serious, and unfortunately it might not go down that well. And they pulled the pin on it. But that was very funny, that whole joke. And then Uwe had, because he brings his mastering gear everywhere, he set up our intro with Skippy the Bush Kangaroo playing halfway through it. And it would have been a good time, but unfortunately that fell through. I think that would have been a YouTube success, that one.
That's awesome.
That would have been awesome. Yeah. And you're a good enough sport to actually do that, Mark. That's really cool. That's good to hear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't take ourselves that seriously. Like, I mean, the music's serious, but at the end of the day, you're creating a show.
Yeah.
And if you're not, I mean, we might be singing about, some pretty serious stuff, but, I'm on stage. You can't wipe the smile off my face, especially if I'm sitting there for the first time in front of 2,000, 3,000 people. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. We'll never take the smile off my face.
Well, let me ask you something really quick, Mark. You co-founded a band with your brother.
Yeah, my twin brother.
That's got to be, your twin brother. That I didn't even know. Yeah. Take us through that, because that's got to be one of those things where you probably have an instant connection musically, but at the same time, there has to be that sibling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, take us through that.
Well, I mean, it probably starts from the day that I decided to, join this band, or make this band. Me and my brother and our old bass guitarist, which is still a lifelong friend for us, we said, let's make a band. So, yeah, sure. And then me and my twin brother both played drums at the time. And we've both been playing for a few years, and we're at a pretty good level, like skill-wise. And he just goes straight out, I'm drumming. And I'm like, so I never was meant to be the singer or the guitarist. But from that day on, I picked up the guitar. And
you're kidding me.
Always sang. Like, I mean, I was always attracted to the melodic side of it. Like, always sang through choirs and stuff in primary school.
Oh, okay.
And always enjoyed singing. Everyone sings. Like, everyone loves singing. Even if you're terrible at it, everyone loves doing it. So I was pretty happy after a couple of months of warming myself into it. The confidence side of thing, I think, was the hardest thing, not being behind a drum kit. But as soon as we pick up the guitar and writing melodies, and with Dean, my twin brother in the back, the drummer, it is. I wouldn't want to play in a band with anybody else.
Oh,
and
cool.
I've done shows with people before, and it's never been the same. It is a heavy connection, and I think it's so much more than musical. in Gothenburg, one show we played, it was such a beautiful acoustic in the room, and you get this massive bounce back. And they're the kind of shows when you've got your brother so tight with you in the back, you almost feel like that you're not people on stage. It's just one big unity, and it's great. I wouldn't want it any other way, to be honest.
That's awesome.
I'd play an acoustic set with just myself if I didn't have my brother drumming. I wouldn't even bother.
Wow, and to think, and obviously, I didn't know that you had the drumming background, so it's pretty amazing that you just like picked up the guitar and got behind the mic and started singing, and then you went from being behind a drum kit to being a front man. That's a totally different thing. To do that, and I'm not saying this because you're on the show. I think guitar skill-wise and vocally, you do some incredible stuff, Mark.
I saw on your Facebook page, Mark, that just in the last couple days, you guys finished laying down the final bits and pieces of the new CD, and that got me really excited. So I have a couple of questions. Sure. The first is, when can we expect it to be out? What is a kind of a target launch date for you?
Or target, I'm hoping you're looking at the November, like October, November. I usually think it's a good time for release.
It is.
I'm hoping that's the target. But like you said, things can. We just had some technical difficulties before. Those sort of things can happen even with recording. So things can push us back. So hopefully everything runs smooth. Mastering is fixed up and everything like that, and then we can plan ahead.
Okay, and then the follow-up question to that is, sometimes bands fall into that sophomore slump, where they've written all that great material and they've had years to work on that first CD. In fact, Lance talked about this on the first episode. So kind of walk us through the going from the first CD to the second CD. How is that material similar, and what elements have you brought in that's different to this CD?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be 3 years since the last CD dropped. We've obviously gone through a lot of maturing, I guess you could say, both professionally and personally as well. We obviously done a lot of things as well since then, tours and different supports. It's one of those things you go through. Personally, with writing music, it's very much a reflection of where I am at personally as a person growing up, different experiences I've gone through in the last few years. So it's still heavy. It's got more of a darker tone to it, this album. It's a lot more melodic. It's not as thrashy, but it's definitely going to get your body moving and your head banging. There's definitely a lot of different sort of elements to it, but overall it's a lot more of a mature sound, definitely refined. But yeah, it's hard to say. The first album, I listen back and I feel like we sound young, and I don't know really how else to put it. Now it honestly sounds like we've got a lot more weight behind us, a lot more sort of experience. And I think you can hear that in this new album. Sure.
What do you have a working title for the new CD?
I've got a title. Yeah, I haven't actually released the title yet. But I'll tell you guys. Why not? The album's gonna be called A World Awakens.
Very nice.
Yeah, and it's pretty much, it's not a concept album, but a lot of the songs will be written on a lot of songs, because obviously it's from a personal point of view. A lot of the songs will be written around the idea of dream states and the whole other world that seems to create through lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis, stresses and anxieties and stuff, all that sort of stuff that can create different dream states and different experiences that can then affect you everyday life and that sort of thing. I don't know. A lot of people have that experience. Some people don't. I don't know if it sounds weird, but that's what a lot of the songs will be about, and how that sort of relates to, different elements of everyday life.
Well, excellent. Now, Mark, one of the things I like to ask all of our guests, because you're in the music scene and obviously you've done a lot of touring.